Hi everyone, and welcome to your Energise practice. This week we are focusing very much on the core as a way to help us connect to our own inner sense of knowing. I guess it's a form of peace and groundedness and confidence. So I'm going to write a bit more about this week to help theme our classes together. But I guess I just want to share at the start of this practice that whilst we might commonly think of the core as a really yang aspect of our body where we want to have all this strength and maybe, we associate it in our minds as being something that we can physically see. If someone's got really low body fat, then they might have a six-pack if they're really ripped. But actually, I want to invite us to think about the core as having a yin quality as well, where it perhaps allows us to have an underlying calm and less externally seeking sense of what is right and what is necessary and appropriate for us. So that means that the core, yes, it's strong and stable, it can also soften and it can support us in whatever it is that we need to do in a really kind of calm and stable way. So I invite you to kind of explore that in the practice together today. But because this is an energized practice, we're going to get moving, and we're going to certainly use the core to get the blood going. So we're going to start on the ground to really start to waken up that connection between the brain and the body. So just coming to lie on your back and getting your pelvis into that position that you feel is somewhere between the anterior and the posterior tucking of the hips. You can roll a little and then come into somewhere in between the two for you. Just touching base maybe, with your hands, feeling your ribs and your hips and making sure your glutes are going to turn on as we just come up into a low bridge position here. So squeezing the glutes, the hamstrings, pushing down through the heels, back of neck nice and long. We're just going to hold this for a few breaths. And strength at the biggest kind of muscle mass of the body, so that the pelvis does send a message to the central nervous system that we've got this. There's enough stability there to allow for range of motion moving outward into the joints and the extremities. So yeah, there is definitely something physiologically true about having strength at the core, the abdomen, the glutes, to allow us that underlying confidence and stability in whatever other choices we want to make with our body. Just holding for a couple more big breaths. And then we're going to pulse, so just drop the butt down and lift it up. So just bridge pulses here, noticing if the ribs want to get involved. I'm really pushing through my heels and squeezing my glutes a little bit at the top of the glute bridge. And if you want to, you can extend the arms up overhead here, but again, just notice what that does. Certainly the rib cage is going to change its position a little bit if we've, really flexed the shoulders there, but just being aware of that for another 3 and 1. And come down. Hands come behind the head. Big inhale to soften through the core and pelvic floor, and exhale to contract, to come up. Back of head is long and the head is heavy in the hands. You're going to lift the right leg, drop it down, lift the left leg to table, drop it down, come down, inhale. Exhale, come up. Raise the left leg to table, drop it down. Right, drop it down. Inhale. Come up, raise right, take left arm overhead and then slice it outside that right leg. Squeeze the core into your center, keeping that tiny space in the back body. Inhale, return everything to the ground. Exhale, lift left leg into table, extend right arm to outside of left knee. And you can even nudge them towards each other. That really lights up through the center. Squeeze through the core and pelvic floor, and inhale, soften and return everything. One more time. Inhale. exhale to lift, right leg to table, left arm to outside of right knee. Maybe push them towards each other, so I'm pushing right knee and quad into back of left arm. Back of neck is nice and long. Inhale. Exhale. And maybe, you're just coming up a tiny way, or maybe if you're working pretty early prenatal, keep the leg down. This is still doing all of the work of connecting the brain to the body and saying, this is where I want you to contract and strengthen and support me. And inhale, return. Okay, we're going to take the right knee and deep flexion, draw it all the way into the chest, and then come up into a low bridge here. And just little pulses, keeping the hip in deep flexion. The hands can maybe, just check and make sure that left glute is really squeezing to support you, and the hips and pelvis are remaining on an even plane. They're not dipping down to the right or the left. 3, 2, 1. Now extend the right leg and just hold that bridge position. Doesn't matter how bent your knees, if that's more comfortable to have a slight bend, do that. Just starting to open up the back of the hamstrings. You can maybe point or flex the feet or roll just for another moment. And then inhale, return everything down to the ground. Exhale, flex that left knee in and come up into the low bridge position, and just little pulses while you try and hold that flexion. And really, I'm just lifting and lowering my pelvis by squeezing my glutes and slightly dipping and lifting my 2 hips on an even plane. 2, 1, hold it up, extend the left leg. Might be nice to really squeeze the quad, open up, maybe flex and point or draw some little circles with your ankle there. Push down through that right heel to lift and make sure the glutes aren't twisting down to one side. Stay low if you need to control the hips on an even plane. And inhale. Roll to one side and come up. Come up to a goddess squat position here, which is kind of like a bit of a sumo or a wide-legged squat position. And hands can rest either on quads, on hips, prayer pose. Might be nice to even start to incorporate some shoulder opening by just taking opposite elbows. And just pulsing here while we do a quick body scan from the ground. Are the arches lifted? Are the knees stacked over the ankles? Is the torso stacked over the pelvis? You might need to lean back a little bit. We're not going to be a perfect rod. We've got that natural S-curve in our spine, so yes, there will be a little bit of lordosis or a curving out of your butt and a little bit of a rounding in your upper body, but just noticing if that's a bit too exaggerated. Stack the skull and just pulse for another 3, 2, 1, come up. Maybe shake the legs out if you need to. We're going to come now into some curtsy squats. So maybe a big inhale and then an exhale, standing with feet slightly wider than hip distance. We're going to step the left foot behind the right. Hands can come to prayer or to hips. Drop that left knee down and try not to come up in between. Step right knee down behind left. Step left knee down. And if this feels pretty okay, you can start to add an opposite elbow tap, working to keep the hips square, but just adding some thoracic rotation. And you can even take that into a prayer position, and the head and gaze can just travel wherever feels comfortable and appropriate for you. Squeezing through the core and pelvic floor as we push up from the squat. And one more to the right and to the left. And now we're just going to cheeky star jump it out. And if that's no good for you and your pelvic floor, you step it out. We're just going to do 10, 9, 8. Big breath here. 2, 1. Maybe roll the shoulders or traction the spine, one vertebra at a time, all the way down to the ground. Let the head go, bend the knees and roll all the way up. And come to stand at the top of your mat. Just a standard sun sail A. So inhale, arms up. Fold forward, exhale, hinge at the hips, bend at the knees, let the head go. Step right foot and left foot to a high plank. Just, if you're on your knees, come down and still do this, just a slight little motion of rocking, just to connect in with the strength of the center supporting us. If we're on a high plank, we can rock with a little bit more motion. And then now everyone drop knees, lower all the way down to the ground. Baby cobra, roll the shoulders back, slightly pushing through the hands to lift up, but really the extension of the back is coming from the back muscles, the glutes, back of neck nice and long, so really give yourself a double chin here. And then push back to a down dog. A nice deep, deep down dog. So bend at the knees a lot here, maybe walk out one at a time by stepping and marching. Alternate knees, and then look forward. We're going to step left or right first, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold, and stand, inhale. Fold forward, exhale. Halfway lift, inhale. Step right foot back. Come up to a high crescent. And now we're going to come to a stork pose. So I'm going to step on my left leg and draw my right leg up to a bent knee position in a standing position there. And then I'm going to drop it down. If you need to tap through on your way through to get your balance, you can just pause for a second there in that skater position, but otherwise extend it back behind you. And then just lift and lower for 3, 2, 1. Drop to right knee and right hand, and in a supported side plank position here, extend left leg and left arm. Connect left knee and left elbow, or in that direction as best you can, for 3, 2, 1. And then step left foot and right foot, forward fold, and come all the way up. Inhale. And exhale. Step left foot back. Come to crescent with the right foot forward. Checking in with the core. Is the torso stacked over the pelvis? Are the hips as best as you can facing forward and not overly anterior or posteriorly tucked in the pelvis? Just that neutral, ribs drawing together, back of neck long. And then we're going to bear all the weight in the right leg and lift the left leg up to stork. Hey. And then we're going to come back into that low toe tap. Kind of like we're headed for warrior 3 in our next sun sail. So we're warming up. And then coming down onto that left knee and left arm. Maybe move the left leg out a little bit so you can balance. So the foot is not directly behind the knee here. Extend left arm and left leg, and then try and connect in the direction of the right knee and elbow. That's it, right knee and elbow. And plant the hands and feet through quadruped, maybe a few cat-cows. Big breaths. And then down dog, we're going to come through our last sun sail here and try warrior 3. So coming through high plank, maybe just a couple of rocks here. Try and draw your collarbones broad, back of neck long. Humeral heads are rolling back, scapula squeezed onto the back, pushing away from the ground with the hands. Tiny bend in the elbows, and then see if you can lower and push back up. Just 20%. Push back up and lower all the way to the ground. Baby cobra. Roll shoulders back. Extend the upper back. And then down dog. Step the left foot forward between the hands. And then we're skipping that crescent. We're going to come straight into that stork pose. So right knee comes to hip height. And then using just the calm, sort of all-knowing, ready musculature of your center. Just slowly push that right foot and control. You're coming into a warrior three. Now, your hands can be on your quad, on your hips, maybe even conveniently, you could have done this in front of a couch. I might put that in the notes. And then I'm using the support here of wherever my hands are, just to remind me to check in with where I'm sensing my hips and body is in space. Can I strengthen and squeeze out of my right leg even more? As I draw up through my core, wrapping ribs together, hips are even, step back, down dog, lift the left leg. Plant that left leg, march it out a few times. Step right foot forward between hands. And coming up to that stork pose. I always struggle on the right side. I should slow down and then kick back. Left heel moving through something really viscous, honey. And then hands can come to support you. Slight bend in the standing leg. Squeeze the glutes on both sides. One more big breath to get long out the crown and the heel of the foot. Contract, exhale every last drop, then plant hands and left feet. Right foot goes up and back. And lower to child's. And that's the end of this Energise practice. I really encourage you, if you can, to just take a few deep breaths in a seated posture here before you move on with your day. I'll see you soon. Namaste.